The Honda partnership with Aston Martin is set to begin in 2026. What must it accomplish in order to triumph? Aston Martin and Honda have agreed to collaborate on the upcoming set of engine regulations for Formula One, as we recently anticipated. As a result, Honda, which technically exited Formula One in 2021 after 3 seasons with Red Bull and a Drivers' Championship victory with Max Verstappen in that last season, will develop and construct a power unit specifically for Aston Martin chassis. However, they weren't truly gone. What happened then? Why then did they decide to work with Aston Martin? They continued to cooperate with Red Bull after 2021, but only as a supplier, giving them the engines that won 17 races in 2022 and all of the races that have been held so far in 2023. Honda finally decided last year that they wanted to not only continue in Formula One, but scale up their engagement back up to become the works partner, as a result of the appointment of a new CEO in May 2021. Red Bull declined their request to do precisely that when they requested. They had already invested a substantial amount of money in developing their own power unit section when they struck an agreement to re-enter Formula One with Ford as a partner. Honda was forced to search elsewhere. They discussed matters with McLaren. Williams was an alternative, but Aston Martin ultimately closed the deal. Honda chose to remain in Formula One, but why? Even if the 2026 Formula One engine regulations call for the usage of 100% sustainable fuels and a more potent electrical component, this fits in well with Honda's larger corporate objectives. Additionally, they recently saw success, taking home the 2022 Constructors' Championship and 2 Drivers' Championships with Red Bull. They also want more. Aston Martin, meanwhile, has unexpectedly moved up the rankings from 7th to 2nd, surpassing Mercedes, their own engine provider. How will Red Bull and Mercedes be affected by Aston Martin's partnership with Honda? And will Alonso win his 3rd rightful title before he hangs up his racing shoes? Mercedes lost one of its most lucrative and successful customers in 2023, so this wasn't just any customer. If this continues to be the norm, Mercedes will be forced to retire its engines from Williams and McLaren. As a result, neither of these teams can compete with the Silverstone-based team's speed. Given that they will soon use their own wind tunnels in Silverstone and deal yet another blow to the Silver Arrows, who are struggling to keep up with Aston Martin's increased competitiveness and are gradually but surely falling behind Red Bull's impeccable pace, it was only logical for Aston Martin to think in this direction. Aston Martin was the squad to watch out for ever since the 2023 season got underway. It was founded for the first time ever on originality and true advancement rather than imitation. While it is true that the design of the vehicle is reminiscent of the Red Bull team, the engineers who worked on its creation have chosen to join Aston Martin and take on a new challenge. Many F1 analysts viewed Alonso's switch to Aston Martin as a career-ending decision. However, it appears that the 2-time world champion is currently the one laughing all the way to the bank. Lance Stroll isn't pleased, despite Aston Martin's enhanced speed and the team's ability to move up to P2 in the Constructors' Championship from P6. Even if his son is unable to produce the same results as Alonso, the friendship between these two on the track is growing, and they are preparing for the possibility of a title battle in the long run. The boss wants to see race victories. Alonso acknowledges that Red Bull now appears to be somewhat in the lead, but the AMR 23 will soon receive significant modifications. According to F1 regulations, each team is subject to aerodynamic testing restrictions. However, this system has been impeded recently. In essence, you are allowed to undertake more wind tunnel and CFD work the lower your championship place is. Aston Martin previously benefited from this with in-season improvements the previous year, since an early concept modification required more development work. Fortunately, Aston Martin had large ATR allowances as a result of finishing 8th at the halfway point of the championship last year and just 7th in 2021. It definitely helps, says Technical Director Dan Fallows. It's definitely been a big positive for us because we had to do a lot of catching up with our development, having changed concepts early last year. We saw during last year that we managed to make a lot of progress with that concept, and that's in no small part down to the ATR limits that we have. How much of a penalty would it be if that gets reduced in the future? Now I think that we've got a good development direction to pursue. It shouldn't be that much of a penalty. It's an advantage for sure at the moment. It was planned for the mechanism to burn gradually. It was never meant for a team with a big budget and a poor result one year to have the second fastest vehicle the next year. But in 2022 and 2023, that is precisely what happened. Aston Martin has one of the greatest ATR allowances on the grid, despite coming in 8th last year. In addition, it has the second best average car, especially during races. Red Bull receives the smallest allocation, and as compensation for exceeding F1's budget cap in 2021, an additional 10% will be subtracted from whatever it is entitled to until October. The quantitative advantage of Aston Martin over Red Bull is as follows. It has 118 more wind tunnel runs and can produce 740 more CFD items throughout each aerodynamic testing session, about 8 weeks. In actuality, it does 1.5 times as much in the same period of time as Red Bull. This has been the situation thus far in 2023, and will remain the situation until the numbers are reset according on the Constructors' Championship standings at that time. Though even then, Aston Martin, who is now second in points, will have more to work with than Red Bull. Theoretically, this may be Aston Martin's secret weapon. It has a chance to pick up speed while Mercedes and Ferrari sort out their problems, and it has more money to allocate to 2024 and in-season development. In one way or another, the opposing sides will have to make even more sacrifices. And Red Bull had the least amount of room, so their strategy this year was to attack the start as forcefully as they could, secure victories and a points advantage, and then transition as quickly as they could to 2024. This makes it possible to capture it. How, therefore, might Aston Martin profit from this position? It is first and primarily in a better position than it was the previous year. No amount of further wind tunnel or CFD work will help if the base vehicle is subpar, the technical personnel lacks direction, and the required tools are not on hand. Aston Martin, on the other hand, has already through a lot since Fallows and other notable personnel arrived, meaning its technical staff has been better prepared. Additionally, with the brand new facility scheduled to open shortly, the team should have access to additional resources. Aston Martin is more likely to take a heavier damage if 2022's improvement is added in. It definitely helps, says Tom McCullough, performance director at Aston Martin. But I don't think that's the dominant factor. I think it's more the restructuring that we've done, the lessons that we learned early last year, and then the lessons we learned during last year. What we're seeing now is just a continuation of that, because there was a lot of stuff last year which from the cost cap side we couldn't do. In years gone by, we would have made last year's car even quicker during the season. Despite the fact that Fernando Alonso's contract with Aston Martin is still unclear, or, more specifically, that they have agreed on a 0-year contract with the Spaniard having to resign at the end of the season in light of everything that has transpired this year, I have no doubts that Alonso will decide to enter into another partnership with Aston Martin. He is currently 41 years old. But here's the confusing part. As the McLaren-Honda period won this or Alonso taking a vacation from the sport, there are certain chits in Alonso's relationship with Honda that need to be buried down. Nevertheless, he still brings up the subject frequently. Alonso has discussed how Honda installed a GP2 engine in a McLaren vehicle between 2015 and 2017. And even if it is all in the past, Honda has shown that they have advanced and will do all in their power to outperform the competition in the coming season. Whether he will have a problem racing far into his 45th year of age because of the Honda engine behind him, time will tell. But for the time being, it appears like this is Alonso's best chance to compete for a third title. But it's safe to say that Alonso is currently filling the shoes that the great Schumacher once filled at Mercedes from 2010 to 2013, assisting the team in accomplishing feats that were previously unimaginable for them. Can Aston Martin triumph in Monaco? What about the trend that is outpacing others? Do you envision Aston Martin utilizing all of their allowed time to come closer? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.